Good afternoon, my name is Ken LaVan, and thank you for joining today's webinar. You are losing money and don't even know it. Just to give you a brief background about me, I started a Social Security law firm about 10 years ago. We have about 20,000 Social Security disability claimants. Then we added on veterans disability about 7 years ago. We probably have about 6,000 disabled veterans that we represent. We also have a company called Case Ghost, and Case Ghost provides outsourcing services, consulting, lead generation, and business coaching for several companies ranging anywhere from $500,000 in revenue to over $50 million in revenue. It's a passion of mine. I really like to help companies execute on their business operations and to keep their costs as low as possible. When we were thinking about this particular webinar, you are losing money and don't even know it, something my dad always used to say came into my mind. It's harder to save a buck than to make a buck. And I never really understood that saying until I started one of my businesses, maybe 15 years ago. And that saying is so true with business as well. You can earn as much money on that top line as you can, but if you can't keep your costs down, it all affects the same bottom line. No matter how high your revenue is, we need to keep our expenses low. And that's kind of what we had in mind for this webinar. It was really about expenses and identifying how to reduce certain areas that tend to be more expensive than others and how to cut those costs. But when we got replies from all the registrants for the webinar, we got a ton of different replies back, and some asked about growing a VA practice, others asked how to market, how to keep their cost conversion per case down. So there were a lot of different questions that came back to us in regard to this webinar, and that's when I figured we would reach out to the attendees or the audience and say, hey, why don't you send us some more information about your companies and about what you're looking for? That way we can tailor webinars that are more in line with what you're looking for. And because a lot of the different topics that we were emailed about, those are actually 30-minute or 60-minute webinars that we'd love to put on, but we want to keep them focused for the size firm that you are, that you're working in. So, whether you have 5 employees or 100 employees or 200 plus employees, each of those webinars would be tailored to your requirement. Now, during this webinar, we're going to give you 3 takeaways. And these 3 takeaways are so critical while you're managing your business. And if you implement and work on any of these 3 takeaways, I guarantee that you will save thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars in 2015. And we'll go through those takeaways as we go through the webinar. So webinar responses. These were some of the areas that we were asked about. Converting leads, diversification, how do I add on practice areas, reducing staff. There were several different questions about reducing staff. Increasing productivity. Now in March 6th of 2015, we're going to host an A to Z blueprint for human resources with Pilma and Ken Hardison on our site in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So we haven't started the registration for that, but pre-registration will open up shortly. And a lot of the questions that we were asked fall into that line on how to really manage your team efficiently and effectively. How can I get the most out of their productivity? So the more information you give to us, the better we can set up these webinars. So where is your business? Whenever I do some sort of consulting for someone, we always start off with a history of their business. Where has their business, when did it start? How has it grown? Are they in growth mode? Are they growing slowly, fastly? Are they flatlined? Do they understand what their costs and overhead are? Are they focusing on really cutting costs? Have they grown quickly and now they really need to cut their costs? So with any business, before you can ever get started understanding or consulting that business, it's critical that we understand as much as we can about that particular business. And a lot of times the business owner doesn't really understand how to cut costs or how to evaluate what to cut, or how to put a process in place to get those expenses down. So where do we begin? With any project, we always identify the largest impacts on the bottom line. It's about return on time invested, ROTI. If there's a project that can save me $2,000 or a project that can save me $200,000, well, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to spend my time on that project that can save the $200,000. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to ever focus on that $2,000 savings or the $5,000 saving, but I'm going to spend the most time so I can get the best return on time invested on that higher line item. So that's critical when we're figuring out what item to look at and what line item to evaluate. Developing an action plan. A lot of companies that we work with, they don't understand how to put together a project plan or an action plan, who to assign to that plan. So that's a critical area that I want to focus on. And all of these things that we're going to talk about, they all really come down to execution, because whoever gets assigned this project at the end of the day needs to be able to execute. That is takeaway number one. The most important part of any project is execution. If we're going to start a project and spend 10 or 20 hours on that project, 50 hours, 100 hours, and we can't execute it at the end of the day, well then let's not even start the project. Let's end the day early, let's head to the golf course, let's take a break. That way at least we can rest, focus on something else that's important, and get it done. But if we pick a project, if we pick something to work on, whether it's converting more cases, cutting our payroll, making our staff more efficient, better training, whatever that task is, at the end of the day we need to execute, and we need to figure out how to execute. So numbers that impact the bottom line. We've got our wheel of impacts. So we've got a bunch of different ones on there, and all of these affect the bottom line. Are we overstaffed? Are we excessively training our team? Are we understaffed so that we're not getting good benefits or good awards on our cases? Are we not setting goals for our team members? Do we have unmanaged growth spurts or phases? And lastly, with the wheel, it came up the same thing, unmanaged growth phases. Obviously, it's a pretty important one. We've gone through tons of them in our business. We grew a couple different years. We grew 50 people. We were up to 280 staff members at one point this year. And we've really been working on, trying to get our staff as efficient as possible. Something that we've always worked on, but once you hit 280 employees, I'll tell you, if you figure out a way to stay as efficient and get rid of 30 or 40 of those employees, it's a huge amount of money. It's $1 million. So that's really what we were focusing on this year with Case Ghost and with our Social Security disability, our veterans disability practices. That was really our focus internally, and we did a really great job for ourselves. We've also helped a lot of other companies reduce staff members from 50 to 55, because that's when you start to get pretty sloppy. It's hard to manage. There's a big difference managing 20 staff versus 50, 55, 60 staff members. So we were able to successfully reduce them from that 50 range down to in the 30 range. We've been able to take others that were 40, low 40s down to 20s, without affecting their the way they handle clients, without affecting the customer satisfaction. Because at the end of the day, to get more clients in and to cut our advertising costs, or to reduce our cost per converted case, we need to have organic leads come in. And the only way to get organic traffic, other than through websites, but it's really by providing excellent customer service. So, you know, cutting staff is great, but at the same time, we really need to have great customer service. So the other way we can do it, other than, you know, spinning the wheel and picking something, is we can look at our financial statement. And based on our financial statement, we can really, you know, target what's a good area, or what's an area that would provide us a great ROTI, or a return on time investment. So if we look at 2014, we see, you know, in this example, it's just a mock-up, but we see the income of this company is about $3.5 million. We see that advertising is, you know, obviously high, $750,000, 20% of total income, or 27% of expenses, and staff is 1.35. And then we see all these other line items that are pretty low until we get down to professional fees, which we'd like to see more detail on professional fees, and rent and other. But the main items really are advertising, staff, and this professional fees. So we look at advertising, and, you know, if we're trying to grow, we're probably going to bump up our advertising. So really the only line item in this particular spreadsheet that pops out at me, or this financial statement that pops out at me, is staff. Our staff is 50% of our expenses. 50%, 1.35 of our total expenses. So we've got our dollar costs in this column, and then this column, what we're doing is we're dividing 2014 numbers by the income. And in this number, in this column, we're dividing our 2014 numbers by the total expenses. So when we divide the total expenses, when we divide our staff costs, 1.35, by our total expenses, 2.7, we get 49%. So that is a great area to focus on. If we do a great job with this one, we can easily trim $100,000 or $200,000 off of that, and that will go towards our bottom line. Instead of $759,000 net, we can get up to almost $1 million in net, which is a huge difference, by really focusing on our staff productivity, our training, and staff tracking. So, and that's, you know, this is just one example, but, you know, that's where I would focus with this particular spreadsheet, or this particular financial statement. So on the next one, action plan. You know, who does action plans? How do we even do an action plan? You know, an action plan for me is very similar to a project plan. And, you know, we've got several managers within our company, and I've got probably 9 that I can choose from at any various time. At certain times, some of, you know, most of them are pretty packed with their projects, but at other times I might have a choice of 2 or 3 of my managers to say, hey, here's a new project, let's really work on it. Well, I know that my top 6, maybe 7 managers that I go to are great at doing projects. They love to do projects. They're a short time frame, they're very focused, they're in and out, and boom, they can do a great job. Whereas I have got my team members on the other end of the spectrum, which are, you know, management level employees that are great at managing day-to-day activities, but at the end of the day, they're not the best, you know, project manager for a, you know, a quick 1, 2, 3 week project. So, you know, I would call that my starting team. You know, my top 5 or 6 managers, those are the ones that I'm going to focus on, and those are the ones that I'm going to work on to get a project in to our game plan, and then to roll out that project, or to identify it, or to analyze that particular project. So we've got number 1, select an area to focus on. So number 2, prepare the analysis to figure out what the return on this time investment is going to be. And then number 3, draft the action plan. When I pick the person, I want the person who can execute. As we know, that's number 1 on our takeaways. But number 2, I need that person who can provide great leadership. Because if I can't execute and I don't have a leader, I'm never going to be able to finish this action plan, and I'm never going to be able to get through the data or the project that we're looking to complete. Those two are the first two takeaways. I need to execute. I need to have a great leader on this project. If I don't have both, I'm going to fail. If I'm going to fail, I don't even want to start this project. And sometimes we'll do that. Sometimes we'll do an analysis and we'll say, this is a great project, but I don't have anyone that can do it. So rather than to assign it to someone who's not going to do a great job, we cut the project. So if you're an owner and you like to do projects and you like to get through something, then you might be able to manage this project if it's valuable enough and if you can dedicate the time. If you don't have the time to dedicate to it, you need to make sure that you have a team player that really can step in and execute and provide the right leadership. Otherwise, we're not going to see a seat on the plan, and we need an outside company to help us out. Okay, you need someone who can provide consulting services like Case Ghost, like another company, and really get into your business to help you execute on that to get to that next level or to cut the cost that you're looking to cut. We've done that a lot for different companies, and those two things are critical: execution and leadership. I can't stress it enough. Okay, an action plan. I wanted to give you a sample action plan. An action plan or project plan is something that we put in writing. We don't have to put it on writing. If someone's great at projects and they've done a ton of them, they can usually commit it to memory. The problem is most people haven't done enough projects, and all the different tasks on that project plan aren't going to come to their mind, and then they're going to forget about that particular task, and it's not going to get done. So it's critical that to have some sort of outline of what we're going to accomplish. Some of the other things that are important to put on your project plan. So in this column, we go through the tasks. If our project is to convert from a law firm to an advocacy group, which is a common theme that I'm hearing from a lot of different law firms. Hey, Ken, should I switch to an advocacy group? I've got a Social Security law firm that's within my PI firm. What should I do? Should I add on veterans disability? Should I make them both an advocacy group? Should I keep them in the law firm? And I say, hey, well, it's not just a quick answer. First thing is we need to understand what's the relationship between the clients that are in the Social Security, that are Social Security claimants, and personal injury clients. We need to understand what level of service we're offering these different clients. We need to understand what's the goal with the advocacy group. Is it because we want to sell the advocacy group? We want to stay away from the bar in our state for marketing purposes? Why do we want to get our clients into an advocacy group? Why do we want to get them? Why don't we want to keep them in the law firm? So it's a big analysis. And then obviously we have to look at the state bar rules and things like that. But this is just the first 30 lines of an action plan that might be used for converting a law firm to an advocacy group with Social Security and VA cases. So in this column, obviously there need to be company names for all the different companies and to split them out. There needs to be informed consent to provide the advocacy information that they're gathering about clients to the law firm if you're going to cross-market your leads, which obviously we want to cross-market as much of our data that we have as possible so we can expand and diversify our services. We need to update our retainers for both VA and Social Security. We need to have a contract with our staff members. We need to change all of our templates. We need scripts. We need to fix our advertisements. And the list goes on and on and on. And that would be the first page of an action plan. Now at the bottom we can see informed consent and retainers. This line is nothing. It was a mistake, and that's okay. We can see these tabs, and if this were the actual Excel document, we could click on informed consent, and it would show us a lot more detail about informed consent. We could click on retainers, and it would see all the detailed information about this project plan on the VA and Social Security retainers. These lines, obviously we've got a start date, a finish date, who's the owner of this project. Even if one person owns this whole project, it's important to get their name onto each task so there's not confusion. I've seen so many projects out there where they would have no owner underneath the line item, and then This project manager thinks that this person is doing it, and this person thinks that the project manager is doing it, because there's no one in that slot. Put the name of the person who's owning that one line item in here, and then any comments that the group might need, so that everyone can share the same information and be up to date. And that's the basic concept of an action plan or project plan. I would recommend them for everyone who is doing a project to include an action plan, especially if you're not used to doing and managing projects. So employees, payroll and productivity. This is the area that we said is a huge way to save money. Payroll, productivity. And I actually, last week I was in Puerto Rico. I was at one of Ken Hardison's mastermind groups. It's a titanium group, and it's his mastermind groups are when a bunch of guys get together, and women, men and women, to discuss marketing, employees, revenue. We spent 2 days in boardrooms just going through all of our different businesses, what the strengths were, what the weaknesses were, how we're diversifying, what practice areas we're adding on. We discussed fair debt collections, Medicare Advantage, VA, Social Security. We talked about auto accidents, slip and falls. We talked about mass torts. I mean, in those 2 days, we spent 16 hours, really pushing through a ton of information. I can't stress how beneficial those mastermind groups are. I don't get any referral fee for recommending Ken Hardison's groups. I know that I've benefited drastically from them over the past 3 years, and I think they're outstanding. So if you're not part of one of Ken's groups, give him a call, check it out, ask him for some information. But there are different levels for all different size companies and business owners. I think they're great. But going back to employees, payroll, and productivity, this is one of the areas that we've really focused on out there, because we all, all of us have, I want to say 40, 50, 100 plus employees, and that's where you really can save money on your bottom line. And so we went through productivity tracking, who's got automated systems in place to be able to track their productivity, overlapping responsibilities, how do we really streamline our processes, how do we set up our teams in a PI firm, how do we set up our teams in a Social Security firm, and same within a VA. Do we have solid business processes in place that we can take advantage of? Do we have staff members that are overly dramatic or cheating on numbers if they're given a bonus based on productivity? And then training. Training was a key topic that we went through, and we spent a lot of time on it. That's actually one of the areas that Case Ghost really gets involved in. Our law firm has several different online modules that we've created. They're proprietary software that new employees will go through to learn about how to complete that particular project. And what we'll do is they'll log onto a computer and they'll spend X hours each day for a week, and they'll log on, do their module, take a test, go through the next module. They're a new employee, so they need to pass the test at a certain percentage, or they don't make it past that module, and they don't get to become an employee of the firm. Once they pass the modules, then they get some live training and they get some on-the-floor experience, whether it's with a case developer or an intake division, and it's a great tool. We've also created a bunch of training modules for our Case Ghost clients, because once you have 5, 10, or 15 employees, it's hard to train those staff members. It's hard to keep the training consistent. It's hard to figure out who's going to do the training. It's hard to get them to the floor. And it's very expensive to continually train people. So the training modules that we've completed for ourselves and our Case Ghost clients have saved hundreds of hours. Probably for us, it saved hundreds of weeks of training time over the past several years. So training modules have been extremely beneficial. Productivity tracking. How do we track our team members? What does that even mean? Are we counting the number of applications they do each day? Are we tracking the number of appeals they do? Can we monitor our attorneys to make sure that they're doing enough work? What does productivity tracking mean? And that was one of the questions that we got during the webinar and in the flyers. But how many applications should someone be able to complete for Social Security each day or each week? And that's a good question, because over the past 10 years, even with our company, we've changed the amount of time that it's taken to do an application. And 7 years ago or 8 years ago when we started doing applications, it might have taken us 15 or 20 minutes to do one. We weren't as thorough as we could have been. Whereas 5 years ago, we really started to be extremely thorough. And then about 2 years ago, Social Security has actually been requiring attorneys and representatives to be extremely thorough on the applications and to gather all the information. Because if you don't gather all the information and you don't complete an extremely detailed SSI, DIB, or 3368 form when submitting the application, if you do them for your clients, Social Security is going to kick it back. And then all of a sudden 3-6 months go by and there's no pending claim for a claimant. So within our firm, we probably take about 1.5 to 2 hours per application. We spend a lot of time on the phone with the client. We have the client then sign the actual original application, and then we submit it and we file it online. So we spend a good amount of time on applications. We've analyzed Social Security practices that are completely doing applications wrong. We've seen law firms get letters from the general counsel's office, and inquiring about them not filing applications online properly, sending in applications that have stated that they're from the claimant when they've actually, when the claimant doesn't actually sign off on the real application, they're only signing off on the last page of the form. We've seen a lot of different ways that Social Security has been coming after representatives and attorneys on not doing the application the right way. So don't be the company, don't be the law firm or the advocacy groups that is cited by 60 Minutes or someone else saying, hey, that company was the one who fraudulently did applications for the Social Security claimant. They didn't have the claimant sign off on their application. Be careful with your applications. Take your time with them. It's not an area that you want to cut corners. That's my recommendation on that question that we received on applications. So overall, that's how I would analyze my payroll and my productivity. Anyone that's over dramatic, anyone that's cheating, they're not. We don't have them as staff members. We just let go of someone that was here for 6 years plus that was misstating numbers on their forms as far as managing their team members. And unfortunately, that's the way we do it, and that's the way all the staff, the employees understand it. But anyone who cheats, anyone who is not really diligently working on behalf of our company, we don't keep them, we don't allow them to work for our firm. The other thing I think that is really important to talk about briefly here, we're going to cover it in our March A to Z meeting when we have it on site here, March 6th. And we'll go through all these payroll and productivity and human resources, org charts, everything when we do the meeting on site. But how many people out there continuously every year increase your employees' pay, even though they're really not becoming more productive or they're not adding any more value to the company? Are you promoting them based on the length of time that they've been with the company, or are you promoting them based on what they've accomplished for the company and how productive they are? We try never to advance someone based on how long they've been with the company. Length of time with the company is not always a benefit for the company. So something very important for you guys to do. Every year, if not done semi-annually, you guys need to at least reevaluate your entire staff and the value of that staff to your company at least on a yearly basis. I prefer to see it done semi-annually. But at least in December, you look at every single staff member that works for your company before you give them their raises in January, and you say, hey, did this person add more value to us as the whole company over the last year, or did they pretty much do the same thing they did the year before and the year before? And I present that question to everyone who's watching this video, especially as you get to 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 employees. Because the more you manage your employees and the more ownership you put on them to require that they become more productive or add more value to your company, the better your return on your employee investment is. So make sure that you're reevaluating your entire staff every year, making sure that they're as valuable, if not more valuable, than the year before. And if they're only the same value as they were the year before, why would they get a raise? You know, just think about that one. All right, so on to the next slide. Advertising. We got a ton of questions about advertising. Converting leads, case selection, television versus internet, organic, billboards, a ton of questions. You know, really advertising is a completely different webinar. Just to touch on it briefly for a few minutes, case selection is very important, obviously. PI, Social Security, if you're not picking the right cases and you're not getting the right amount of money per case, it's hard to make money. You know, PI, I've heard guys make anywhere from $4,000 per auto accident all the way up to $16,000 per case. It really depends what you're marketing for and if you're getting those cases in. Social Security, you know, Social Security, we're capped, but I've seen attorneys at the hearing level earn an average of $2,500 versus $4,000. So the question is, you know, am I holding a lot of cases and they're not as valuable? You know, should I not be holding all those not valuable cases and really focusing on the winners to get my average fee per case higher? Those are all part of the things that you want to evaluate. The other thing that you really need to focus on is your conversion and your funnel. You know, how many people am I getting in touch with? How many people am I accepting? How many people am I getting retainers back from? How many people am I actually signing up and who are actually becoming clients? So those are the questions that you'd want to follow up with for your advertising. So what's my cost per case at the bottom line? So we do a lot of coaching on that as well. And actually we do a lot of, at Case Ghost, we do a lot of screening of cases for clients. That's probably our most popular product. We buy the lead, we screen the lead, we make a recommendation to the attorney, and the attorney can keep the case or not keep the case. So the takeaways for today. Pick a strong project leader. No matter what project we're working on, pick that strong leader. Reevaluate staff members semi-annually, at worst annually. Make sure that our staff is giving us a value if we're increasing their pay. Train them. Do a great job with your staff. Always execute a project that you're going to start. Execute, execute, execute. I can't stress it enough. Those are the three takeaways. Pick one of the three to focus on. Focus on all three. Either way, that is how you will maximize your return next year on your own time and your manager's time. Now, there were a couple more questions. What are the benefits to having case managers versus having an application team, a hearing prep team, etc., with specialization in the specific areas? We have 65 employees. Great question. You know, we've done it different ways throughout the entire time that we've done Social Security. We've had case managers that do everything from A to Z. We've had other case managers that have focused on getting medical records, and then they would get the assistance of a medical requesting team. They would have the assistance of a tab file clerk that would flag the critical, medical records in the file. We had a submitting division. we've had it a hybrid where we've had case developers that really manage the client, and then they've got some, smaller groups, the ones that handle more repetitive tasks. At each stage of your company's growth, managing the cases drastically changes depending on redundancy. I do like my divisions to be not redundancy, but I like if I'm going to have a division, I don't want to have a division where it's limited to 1 or 2 people. So if you only have 10 or 15 employees, it's hard to have different divisions. It's pretty critical to have a case manager work on the majority of the case and maybe have some outside secretarial assistance. As you grow to 100 plus employees, well, it's much easier to have a case manager manage that case and then have that medical submitting team where you have 3 or 4 people that are only submitting records. You have 1 or 2 people that are calling medical records facilities, because those are much lower level employees. For a 65-person firm, I really have to do an evaluation, understand what other practice areas that particular firm is working on. It would depend if they're, if they're doing PI, and if their goal is to really provide a high level of customer service. I might say every client should have a case developer. And anytime someone calls into the office, from day one, that person would always get that same case developer. So that question is a very challenging question, and it really depends, on your own, as the owner's desire to manage cases and to provide what level of service to those particular clients. It's a good question, and if you want to give us a call, I'd be glad to talk about that one. But it's a good question. How much do you pay a Social Security disability attorney? Our attorneys range drastically. Our managing attorney, obviously, he makes a significant amount of money. He looks at every case that we bring in the door and any case that we withdraw from. He'll look at every single appeals council case. He will manage all of our attorneys, and he just does a tremendous job. If we have an entry-level attorney, usually they're going to be somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000. We try not to have any Social Security disability attorneys that are doing day-to-day work that are over $70,000. Really, if they make it that high, then they might switch to the veterans disability practice, or if you have a PI firm, you might want to get them up to the PI level. It's hard to make money when you start paying all your Social Security attorneys $100,000 plus. Having trouble attracting decent Social Security cases. I've tried multiple internet lead services and I'm not having any luck. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it is hard to get good Social Security disability cases. We do a ton of lead generation for our own company. We use a lot of other lead generation companies. We probably process about 15,000 leads per month for our Case Ghost clients and for our own Social Security clients. The conversions vary based on the lead cost that we buy them at. But if you're interested in talking about, lead generation and how to buy good leads and convert those leads, definitely call us. It's way beyond this particular webinar. But call Alex, email, Alex, or I think it's avalencia@caseghost.com. You can always email me, LaVan@caseghost.com. The other questions. What kind of margin can be achieved in a well-run Social Security disability practice? In a well-run Social Security practice, I think you can get to somewhere around 30% margins. I do think it takes a little time to get there. Obviously, the first 2 years is a lot of investment in your firm, but after 3 years, 2.5 years, your return should be pretty good. Picking the cases is it's much more important to pick better cases now than it was 3 years ago. That's for sure. But if you're picking the right cases, I still think it's a great business. If you're also investing in Social Security, I am a big fan of cross-marketing to those leads VA disability representation. That was one of the questions on here. How do I start a VA practice, and what are the benefits of a VA practice? a veterans disability practice is very valuable. I think that my veterans practice is more valuable than my Social Security practice, even though I have 3 times more Social Security cases. My average VA fee is closer to $10,000, whereas my average Social Security fee is closer to $2,500. So a VA practice, it just, I think we made a mistake when we started our VA practice that, we weren't as selective as we should have been. So it took us 5+ years to turn a profit in that business. Whereas if I started it from today and I were much more selective on my cases, I would be picking cases where I'm going to get a fee of $15,000, $20,000 plus, and I'm going to turn those cases around in 2 to 3 years. So really, after 2 to 3 years, I should be netting a significant amount of money. But that's it's a different way than I did it. Like I said, we were very aggressive taking cases 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, and now we have 6,000 plus cases. Just time for a couple more questions. Would you do an in-person application or appeal, or is it better to do them via phone? We do all of our applications and appeals via phone. We generally don't have people coming into our office because we represent people all over the country, primarily in the Southeast, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, but we do have clients all over the country, and it would be hard to get them into our office. If you're a local practitioner, I've heard some very successful practitioners doing in-person applications and appeals, but we know we don't do them. And the last question for today is, how do you track productivity? Tracking productivity can be very challenging if you don't have the right systems in place. We have a proprietary software that's been patent pending for a couple years, and it looks like it's going to be approved very, very soon. And our systems can track productivity. They can track the number of cases and the statuses of the cases. It can track who's completed tasks and when statuses change. But if your systems can't do that, it's very, very easy to track things via spreadsheet, especially if you have a small number of employees. And you can easily track their productivity. You just have to know what is important to track. Sometimes it's important to track a task. Other times it's important to track a series of related tasks. So obviously counting numbers and tracking things all day can be extremely time consuming. So you have to pick the right ones to track and how to track them. So once again, I just wanted to summarize who I am. I appreciate everyone's time. Just to give you my background, I graduated law school almost 20 years ago. I started several different businesses outside of law. After graduating, I went into an IT business. Then we merged that IT business, technical support business, with a software company. Later on, I started a business that did internet videos and books, and we ended up doing a nationwide tour for inner city kids and their parents on how to use computers and the internet. It was called Parents Connected. It was a great project. I started the Social Security disability business about 10 years ago. We started the VA about 7 years ago. We started our web development business, blogs and article writing for attorneys about 5 years ago. And then lastly, we created Case Ghost about 3 years ago. Case Ghost provides consulting, training, staff evaluations. We do outsourcing, lead gen, and we just really like to help businesses succeed. So if you want some help, feel free to give us a call. Always like to brainstorm and learn about businesses. So thank you very much for attending. I appreciate your time, and everyone have a great day. Thank you very much.